Welcome back to the WSU Democrats Podcast. My name is Ethan Bishop. I'm the president of the organization.
I'm Vaughn. I'm the vice president.
And today we're going to be talking about very many interesting things, such as Trump calling Tim Walz the R word, Trump versus Mark Kelly and other Democratic veterans, the boat strikes, Pete Hegseth and possible war crimes in the Caribbean, and Utah redistricting, Prop 4, and the GOP trying to undo the map that let Democrats have one fucking seat. Okay, so on the Trump calling Tim Walz not the N word, the R word. That I'm not going to say that'd be worse, but yeah, that would be terrible as well. On Thanksgiving night of all nights, Trump went on Truth Social and ranted about immigration and Minnesota's Somali community. In that rant, he called Minnesota Governor Tim Walz the seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, using the R word as a slur. Walz has a son with multiple disabilities and responded, quote, as a parent, saying the slur is cruel and damaging and that Trump has normalized hateful behavior towards disabled people. Trump's own nephew, Fred Trump III, whose son has severe disabilities, publicly condemned the language and said the R word is never acceptable and very hurtful. Disability advocates and even some Republicans with disabled kids have spoken out, saying his words have real consequences. And this isn't the first time, because it was said, I believe it was Fred Trump III, almost certain, that he had reported that in the White House during Trump's first term, that he said that disabled people should just die. And it's just like, what the fuck? So he clearly has a disdain for disabled people. He mocked a disabled reporter on stage, put his arm up like that, and it's just fucking disgusting. As someone who works with disabled people as a way to make a living, as someone who has actual connections with these people, who actually see them for what they are, to use the R word as a slur, especially as the president of the United States. Because it's one thing if a private citizen says, I still think that denigrates discrimination, and you should not say the R word, and that, like, you shouldn't use it as an insult at all. But from the president of the United States, that just normalizes it way more. And he's still, when asked about it, is standing by his words. He's not taking it back, because he fucking never takes anything back until he realizes he absolutely needs to. Like how he rolling back on some of the tariff stuff or on Epstein. Yep. Like until he's absolutely backed into a corner and can't get out of it. And he's not going to, bend the knee. And when it comes to this, like a word, yeah, he's not going to, do that. And the sad thing is, I'm not going to go into specifics, but there are some disabled people who have Down syndrome, who are severely disabled, who get on YouTube or they get on these different apps and they look at Trump content and right-wing propaganda, and they actually fall for it. And I've seen this happen in my line of work, where they become huge Trump supporters because they don't understand. And and it's not the same as just a low information voter, just, oh, I'm MAGA. They're actually being indoctrinated. So, and if they hear that from Trump, I think that just increasingly is going to make them feel like, oh, I wish I wasn't disabled so that I could appease him, basically, and not be the R word. And it just totally means that anyone who works with disabled people, anyone who has a disabled family member, anyone who cares about disabled people should absolutely condemn Trump and be like, what the fuck? Like, why did you say that? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, from the highest point of office, like, you should not be using any of that language. And because Trump has the vocabulary of a 12-year-old boy, we're just seeing that more and more, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. And, there's not going to be any canceling him for it, but it definitely is not right, should be avoided. And, like you said, I think this happens to a lot of different demographics and groups of people. They kind of get fooled into thinking that Trump actually cares about them, immigrants, minorities, LGBTQ people, any of those people that Trump, it's clear he doesn't support them. In a lot of cases, they still fall for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just makes absolutely no sense. And especially calling Tim Walz, how, like I said, he has a son with multiple disabilities, and the Republicans fucking crucified Walz's son when he was reacting at the DNC to his father being nominated to vice president. and he was crying and all that, and all the Republicans were like, oh, this is what liberal, like, sissy boys are like, and they were all, it's like he's literally disabled. And plus, if he wasn't, like, seeing your dad literally could be ascending to the second highest office in the fucking entire country, it's like, yeah, I would probably be crying too. Like, and it just makes no sense. There's absolutely no remorse, no anything. And any Republican, and this is what I fucking hate, is how the college Republicans will get up there and they'll act all cute and they'll be like they're not supporting something. That's absolutely terrible. You support a man who just denigrated an entire fucking population in this country who honestly deserve a hell of a lot more than Trump does. And you're just going to act like he either didn't say that, or, oh, I support him, his policies, which are terrible, by the way, but I don't support him as a person. It's like, dude, you're going to look past that? Like, if Biden was out here calling people retards and stuff, yeah, I would not look past that, period. Like, I'd probably still vote for him over Trump, but I would be hella begrudgingly. And I would bring that up constantly, like, why did he say that? He needs to take that back. Whereas with them, they just act like it doesn't exist and that we're just irrational for caring about it. It's like, you know what? Fuck you.
Yeah. But it's also like a lot of these Trump supporters, it's very much would not go the other way. So, they'll defend it if when Trump says it and say, oh, it's not a big deal, you're being a liberal sissy or whatever. And then, if Biden said it or anyone on the left side, they would, I'm assuming they would probably flip out about it somewhat. I mean, with the GOP, they're generally less sensitive to that sort of language, but I think they would absolutely make a problem out of it if, some Democrats said it as well. But when it's Trump, they just deny it.
With anything like that, with Gavin Newsom, like, where he doesn't go anywhere near calling anyone the R word, but he's very, like, brutally honest, and he's, like, kind of crass. Like, I saw one video which they put on Facebook, some right-wing account to make him look bad, but it was some right-winger asking him a question, trying to catch him on something, and they asked something about trans sports or trans people in bathrooms and that sort of thing, and he basically laughed them off and treated them like they were just fucking ridiculous, like he should have. And then they're like, oh, he laughs off question about, like, women's rights or some shit like that. And it's like, no, like, and that's why they hate him. They hate any Democrat who actually takes a stand. Like, when Biden did a speech in Pennsylvania, literally, I believe it was at the spot where the Constitution was written. And he had these red lights behind him. It did look kind of ominous, but I thought it was kind of badass. And he was like warning about the dangers to American democracy, which we are seeing today. He was rightfully warning the entire country and saying that, that MAGA extremists are a threat to us and our way of life. And everyone was like, oh, they were like comparing him to Hitler because of that speech. So anytime anyone on the left takes a stand or does something kind of edgy or, does something like that, they're just like, oh, they're so extreme. They're, so mean. They're so rude. They are unhinged and that sort of thing. Whereas Trump just gets away with anything. Yeah. Whereas they're incredibly threatened, especially if it's a man who is talking their shit and they're not taking anything from them. I think, because that destroys their entire narrative. They want someone like a Kamala Harris, or even, frankly, someone like a Joe Biden who is just feeble and kind of incompetent. They don't want some strong man up there who can actually, talk shit to them and back it up and, won't back down, okay? They want weak Democrats. They want weak candidates who won't call it out.
Yeah.
And the fact that Trump calls Tim Walz the R word and all that kind of thing, like, it just shows how weak they really are. But,
yeah.
All right, so next up, Trump versus Mark Kelly and other Democratic veterans. What actually happened? A group of Democratic lawmakers who are military or national security veterans, including Senator Mark Kelly, Representative Jason Crow, etc., released a video reminding service members that they must refuse illegal orders and uphold the Constitution. Trump responded on Truth Social, calling their message seditious and saying they should be arrested and put on trial. He reposted a supporter who said they should be hanged because George Washington would, and described their behavior as seditious behavior from traitors, punishable by death. Kelly and others put out a joint statement saying, Trump's rhetoric is literally calling for their murder. They're standing by their oath to the Constitution, and they're not going to be intimidated. And Kelly specifically has a long record of service, combat missions as a Navy pilot, then as a NASA astronaut who flew multiple shuttle missions and helped recover the bodies from the Columbia disaster. And also, a lot of people don't know this, but Mark Kelly's wife, Gabby Giffords, who is in Congress, she survived a mass shooting. She got shot point blank in the head, and 6 other people got killed. And then she became one of the biggest advocates against gun violence. So, like, him and his wife, they've lived a crazy life. Like, what he's done for this country, like, Mark Kelly is an American hero, and Trump is literally an American villain. Like, he's the American villain of our history, I'd say. Like, it's crazy that he would say anything about Mark Kelly as if he could ever be, like, 1/4 of the man that he is. Like, and the only thing that kind of pisses me off is in response to Trump literally calling for their execution, I still don't really like the rhetoric that's coming out of the Democrats, because they're still like, oh yeah, and Pete Hegseth calling for an investigation into them and all that kind of stuff. They say, oh yeah, Pete Hegseth is completely unqualified. Trump was calling for my execution. He should not be doing that, blah, blah, blah. But they don't actually say, yo, this needs to stop. Trump is a piece of shit, basically. Like, why is he calling for members of Congress' execution? Like, and I feel like there's just not enough veracity in response to it. They're just kind of acting like it's kind of normal, where they should be like, yeah, the president of the United States called for my execution. Like, fuck you for that, and fuck you if you think that's okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't really think how the Democrats haven't made this as much of a big deal as it really is, and I think it might be partially because we're kind of gotten accustomed to and to Trump's rhetoric and the things he says, and it just kind of things like this don't really stand out as much as they used to. I think the same concept can be applied to gun violence. 20 years ago, something school shooting or any mass shooting would happen, and it got a lot more news coverage and a lot more national uproar in the country. But now it's just another day, another mass shooting, and I think with gun violence, and as well as what Trump says, we need to kind of take a step back and realize the magnitude and the severity of what he says. Yeah.
And with Mark Kelly specifically, even though I wish he was a little bit more aggressive, and honestly, what Kevin Lundell said makes so much sense with how their advisors and these pundits and that they get in their head and they're like, no, you can't make this person mad. You can't make this person mad. You can't be a little bit unhinged. You can't do this or that, which literally makes them just sound super non-convincing and just sounds like a DNC email where it's like, fuck you, dude. Why should I listen to you? Like, you're not taking this as seriously as you should. But that being said, I think Mark Kelly has positioned himself really well, or Trump has positioned Mark Kelly well to run for president in 2028. Because just look at his track record. Like I said, astronaut, Navy pilot, U.S. senator. He in the story with his wife, like, he has a long track record of service to this country. And with Trump calling for his execution, he could say, "Hey, I was one of the top senators, going against Trump. He literally called for me to be executed. I'm the person who can take this country back from Trump, basically." And I think that would be a strong message. I would still prefer like a stronger communicator like Newsom, but I just think that's notable that he could be a serious candidate, and on paper he would be really good. I think it would be really hard to defeat Mark Kelly in a general election.
Is he bald?
Yes.
Okay.
He kind of looks like a goblin. But.
Yeah, I did see a video. I wasn't sure who it was, but I saw him talking about how the things he's done for the country, and I think we need to see more people like him in politics who have served the country and are more of like a regular person, not these crypto traders and billionaires. I think we need to get those out and have people who have served the country and really lived the realistic American life, whereas Trump has never never been in poverty and has had maids his entire life and stuff like that, who very few people can relate to. So I think having someone like Mark Kelly would be great.
Yeah, and just representation from the bottom up. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I want like people like myself to run, who comes from an incredibly poor family. It was only recently, I've lived in an apartment all my life, low income housing, until my parents bought their house with really everything they had, using loans and all that kind of shit. Like, we need people who haven't been raised with a silver spoon.
Yeah.
And because they can actually relate and they can actually be populist. And the fact that Trump convinced so many people that he was a populist and actually cares about them is just ridiculous, because we need someone who actually knows the experience. And honestly, that's not a lot of the Democrats either. Like, a lot of them were raised with a silver spoon, and that's how they got to where they are.
Yeah.
Like, we need people who are fighters. Like, I think AOC, like, I'd prefer AOC over Kamala Harris. I think that she would bring more like Obama 2008 energy. And I think that way more than Kamala Harris would. Even though AOC is younger and she's also a woman of color, I still think she would be stronger just because she's more of an inspiring candidate. And she was literally a waitress. Like, so it's not like she was raised with a silver spoon.
Yeah.
We just need people who comes from that background and who don't like get caught up in the, the pundits and the corporate interests and all that kind of shit.
And also, going back to, political advisors, from their perspective, anything that their candidate says that makes people angry, they probably view it as a negative thing and that shouldn't be said. But, those things should be said, like AOC and Gavin Newsom. They're not afraid to say those things. I think authenticity is a huge problem in politics, because they're so scared to lose any sort of voter or anger anyone who might vote for them, that they just don't say it, and they just kind of seem like a husk of a person. They don't really have a personality, because everything they say is just so crafted and premeditated. And I think that's why some people like Trump, because he is unhinged. I think there is a line you can't cross. You do have to stay within not calling people slurs, but you should definitely be unhinged in the sense of if something's wrong and you want to be passionate about fixing it,
Yeah, and honestly, and this might come off bad, but I honestly think when it comes to rhetoric, especially now, you need to create some kind of us versus them narrative, and that's what Biden did. And he didn't really do it as successfully because he wasn't as good of a communicator and all that, but the point still stands, and that's why there could have been a lot bigger of an ass kicking in 2024 than there was, but I think a lot of people realize that, Trump is bad and all that kind of shit, whereas Biden was like, in that speech I was talking about, it's not even all Republicans, it's just the subset of Republicans that are MAGA who are incredibly dangerous and extreme and want to undermine democracy. You need to have that kind of thing, because if you don't have kind of a target to say, oh, these people are going to destroy this country if you don't do something about it, then you're not really going to motivate anyone. It's one thing to say, oh, hope and change, we're going to, fix all these things. But when there's a threat present, you need to call out that threat and say, yo, we need to stop this, because hate, like, I'm not saying we should hate just for the sake of hating anyone, but if someone is so terrible that when you hear about what they did and what they want to do, that your reaction is hate, that is very motivating, and that'll make you vote against them and try to stop them from getting into power. And that's not the worst thing. That's your brain telling you, oh, it's like your primal brain in a way. It's like, there's a threat, we need to eliminate the threat. That doesn't mean go out and kill the person. That means defeat them in the election. And there needs to be both. It can't just be, all positives and all that kind of thing. There needs to be, this opponent has terrible ideas. They want to screw over this country or screw over this city. They are for the status quo. And that's why I love how Flor Lopez said, it's not about, nothing is impossible. It might take time, but we can just do it. It's just all about saying, yes, we can do this. So even like a moderate Republican, you still need to cast them. You're a do-nothing politician, and you're the reason why so many people are in poverty and are getting fucked right now. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much against pitting people against each other and political division. It's worse than it's ever been. However, I think when you have such a severe problem and such a severe threat as the Trump administration is to the country and to the Constitution and everything we stand for, it does call for that passion, even if it is hate and even if it is. But you have to recognize, like, people who say we should always debate and be kind and work with each other. Like, we absolutely should do that. But you do have to understand how pressing of an issue this is, and that requires that passion against what really is the enemy. Like, Trump calls the Democrats the enemy of the state, but enemy of the state, I would say, is an enemy of the Constitution generally, and that's very much Trump.
Yeah, literally said it should be terminated so that he could overturn an election he lost by 7 million votes.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm against the political divisions too, and I think it needs to be toned down. I just don't like it when they're saying, Democrats need to tone it down, because it basically, I think it starts at the top. Until Trump either dies or his influence is whittled away, or he literally does a 180 and he's like, I condemn everything I said, we need to turn down the temperature and all that kind of stuff. And he tried to say that after he got shot in the ear, but he instantly went right back to it at the RNC convention.
Yeah.
Where he literally still had the patch on his ear. But yeah, they just literally just demonized the other side and all that. And then they say the Democrats need to turn down the volume. It's like, no, we're not going to unilaterally disarm ourselves while you still are running wild. That's like the U.S. saying we're going to denuclearize with Russia still there.
Yeah.
What basis do they have to not just destroy us?
Yeah.
So we need to keep that rhetoric up, because without it, that's the other side can tap into that hate and that anger and all of that, whereas we need to bring out some of that energy. And I think you're right about Trump bringing the kind of unhinged, kind of saying what's on his mind. And I think the Democrats need to have more of that agenda. That's why I'm not that careful about what I say on here. I know I swear a lot and I do all that. That's how I am in my normal life. And that's just like how Kevin Lindell said, if you don't act genuine and you don't act like how you normally do, they're not going to take you seriously.
Yeah.
And if anyone has a problem with me saying fuck or anything like that, it's like, that's just how I am. And you don't have to watch the podcast. But it's all about being genuine and being genuinely who you are. And that is a little unhinged. That is a little messy. That is not PC per se. Even, sometimes I talk to ChatGPT and it'll get after me for some of my decisions. And I'm like, they wired you to be too PC.
Yeah.
Like, just the little things that I say, like, a lot of it's not even that big of a deal, or it's not even supposed to be taken like literally or whatever, or it's supposed to be edgy, literally supposed to be. And it just doesn't understand because it was wired to be like that. But we don't want PC anymore, okay? We want real, genuine rhetoric and people who care about this country. And if you care about this country, it's, defending it, you're going to defend it in a way that is likable and in a way that is effective and in a way that doesn't seem like you're a cardboard cutout of whatever these advisors want you to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, if
Absolutely.
we don't got anything else to say on that. Boat strikes, Pete Hegseth, and possible war crimes in the Caribbean. This one is messy. So what's been reported on September 2nd, 2025, U.S. forces struck a boat in the Caribbean that the Trump administration said was carrying drug smugglers from Venezuela. Reports from the Washington Post say Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a verbal order that, quote, the order was to kill everybody, and that the Special Operations Commander then ordered a second strike that killed survivors who were in the water after the first attack. The White House has confirmed a second strike happened and that 2 survivors were killed, but has tried to place responsibility on the admiral while still saying the operation was lawful self-defense against narco-terrorists. Legal experts and former military lawyers say that if the U.S. killed people who are shipwrecked and no longer a threat, that would clearly violate the laws of war and peacetime human rights law. In other words, it could be a war crime. Military manuals explicitly say you cannot target wounded, sick, or shipwrecked survivors. Because of this, there is bipartisan scrutiny in Congress. Lawmakers on the armed services and related committees are demanding investigations and briefings on the boat strikes more broadly. There have been multiple lethal strikes on small boats, killing dozens, including the September 2nd incident. So right now, it's fair to say Hegseth is facing serious accusations that he gave an unlawful order. The administration insists everything was legal, and Congress and legal experts are openly questioning whether the second strike amounted to a war crime. So, yeah, just absolutely disgusting what's being alleged here. Literally blowing someone up out of the water, and then you see they're still alive, and you're just like, nope, kill them. It's like, what the fuck? You have absolutely no authority to do that. If they are immobilized, and in the first place, they're smuggling drugs and that sort of thing. The U.S. has gotten no congressional approval for any kind of war with Venezuela or any war against the drug traffickers or anything like that. So this whole thing is illegal to begin with. You shouldn't be blowing people out of the water. If anything, you should be defending America on the shores and to prevent them from actually getting in. You shouldn't be preemptively doing that. You're opening yourself up to war crimes and impeachment and all this kind of thing. So it's really kind of stupid on their end. They're just doing this to seem macho. And, Pete Hegseth even posted a picture. It was like a spoof of like Franklin, and it was like had, like a whatever it was, RPG or whatever. And it was like, oh yeah, Franklin kills narco terrorists. And it was like, and like you're making jokes about it of like killing stranded humans. It's like there's literally no reason to kill them other than just to disregard the dignity of human life. I don't care if they're drug smugglers. I don't care if they're bringing something that could kill Americans. That doesn't mean you just indiscriminately murder people. It reminds me of The Walking Dead when, I don't know if anyone's ever seen that, but, well, people have seen it, but the governor, who's a villain on there, he convinces his whole community to go attack Rick and the survivors in their group at the prison, and he goes, and at first he was like, yeah, we're just going to take these hostages and we're going to get the prison, but low-key, he just wanted revenge and because they destroyed his community before, and he just wanted to kill all of them. So then once they were actually there and shit hit the fan, he was like, you know what, kill them all. That's literally what he said. And that reminds me of this, where they're just so bloodthirsty and homicidal that they're like, yeah, we're literally just going to murder people. To own the libs even. I think that's what this is about too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I think, so I heard that Pete Hegseth is, on one hand, he's passing the blame to the people under him, not that, he ordered the second strike himself personally. We also know that he has lied about it, so there's something up there. A few months ago he said there was no second strike, and now the evidence comes out that there is, and he said, oh yeah, and he's acknowledging it. So I do think that it is a little tricky because if they struck the boat and it killed everyone on board, there's no problem. And when there's two alive and then they strike them again, then there's a huge problem. So I think ultimately it's still wrong and definitely should be considered as a war crime. But it is, I think that's where they're kind of getting away with it somewhat. There's that kind of gray area where they weren't just innocent civilians. Yeah. I also think that we're seeing these, because this is not the first drug boat that we've struck from Venezuela. We've seen a few others recently, and I think this is leading up to the possible war that might happen in Venezuela pretty soon, which I want to jump into a little later. But I think the U.S. wants a regime change from Nicolas Maduro, who's the dictator in Venezuela, and I think by making these strikes on the drug boats public and kind of making a display of it, is they're hoping to, threaten Maduro even more and just put more pressure on him to resign or listen to what we want from him at least a little bit.
Yeah. I think that is true. I mean, yeah, like I said, the double tap is the huge problem. Like the first one could argue that you're just immobilizing the ship. You're going to kill people. But Like, that's one thing when the express goal is to literally kill people. I think that's when it gets fucked up. But yeah, I don't know. That's just what I think about it. But I think that war, if you want, we could go into that, because after this, I want to go on to a completely different topic.
Yeah.
But if you have anything to say about war with Venezuela.
Yeah, I did a lot of research. So the Venezuela is in a huge problem right now. Their economy has gone to shit. Inflation's going to soar even more than it already has. Their currency is in the dump. So just a little bit of the history. So Hugo Chavez was essentially dictator as well, authoritarian in Venezuela. And he ruled during the oil boom. So oil is huge in Venezuela. They have the largest proven oil reserves in the entire world. So there's a lot of pressure. A lot of people want it. And Hugo Chavez managed that pretty well, was able to make billions, and he invested back into the country. And he was liked by the Venezuelan citizens. However, towards the end of his term, he mismanaged a little bit, and they saw a declining economy. He died in office, and Nicolas Maduro, who was personally appointed by Chavez, he took power, and he was inherited in a declining economy, but he made it far, far worse. His country does not like him because he's been a even more strict authoritarian. He has killed and imprisoned his political opponents. And I don't know if I said it already, but he's been in power since 2013. And so yeah, people are struggling to buy food, and about 28 to 32% of the entire country's population has fled under his rule. So that just shows 30% of the population likes him so much that they just straight up leave their home country. That's huge. And then also for some more numbers, so 95% of Venezuela's export revenue comes from crude oil. So whenever there's any sort of impact, good or bad, on the oil market, it affects the entire country. And there's everyone, like I said, wants their hand in Venezuela's oil, and we're seeing that from China, Russia, and Iran, a lot of our biggest enemies, and they all want something a little different from what we want with Venezuela. So what the U.S. wants is, we want a regime change. We want a democracy. We're kind of seeing that with Maria Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize this year. She's the leader of the Democratic Opposition Party. Now, unfortunately, the next presidential election is in 2030, and with Maduro in power, he could delay it or postpone it or rig it like he pretty much did in 2024. There's a lot of controversy on that, but basically, so China has loaned $60 billion to Venezuela, and they take their repayment in oil. Russia sends military equipment. They also use them for military intelligence. Iran repairs their refineries, and also military cooperation anti-U.S. And then all three of those countries, they want that stake in the Western Hemisphere and close to United States borders. So there's a lot of power involved, a lot of money involved. A lot of people are saying that we might go to war soon. And then I just want to give a little more history that the U.S. has a large history of invading and influencing foreign countries politically for oil gains. We saw this with Iran in 1953, Iraq in 2002, Gulf states, Latin American countries. And then it kind of seems in this situation with Venezuela currently that the U.S. is kind of the good guy. We don't want an authoritarian dictator in power. We want a democracy. The other countries that want their stake in Venezuela, they don't really care how it is politically, as long as Venezuela supports them and is anti-U.S. Those are the main things. But the U.S. is not the good guy historically. And so in 1953, so prior to the coup in 1953, where we changed the regime in Iran, Britain controlled Iranian oil production and took almost all the profits, with Iranians working in brutal conditions. So Mohammad Mossadegh was democratically elected, and he took back control and profits for the Iranian people from the oil. And obviously Britain didn't like that, so they got the U.S. involved, and we went in and I think killed him and changed the regime and gave oil control back to Britain. So we're not always the good guy. You know, they tried to stand up for themselves in Iran, and we went and took it just for oil gains. So I think the U.S. is not necessarily blame-free in this situation, but I think it is a huge deal. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. And I think, again, with these drug boat strikes, Trump is trying to really just put on the pressure, and we're sending more military into the Caribbean and to try and force Maduro out of power.
Yeah, I think that all of that is true. I would just say with that, I think that this war is at least in part due to oil, that from the U.S.'s standpoint. And there was a Trump administration official on Fox News who literally said that. She was like, yeah, Venezuela is a country with a lot of oil. Like, she literally mentioned that as one of the reasons why they want to attack Venezuela. So I would be kind of weary of anyone being like, oh, you know, this is substantively different, because I don't think they give a fuck about the people of Venezuela. I don't think Trump does. I don't think Pete Hegseth does. J.D. Vance. All of these people are pieces of shit who couldn't care less. They just want oil and their own profits and profits to the corporate interests. And I'm actually one of the first people who would say, when it comes to authoritarian regimes, if we can overthrow a fucking terrible regime, you know, that is oppressing its people, violating LGBTQ rights, women's rights, human rights, that are allowing FGM and, you know, different things, whether that's part of their religious practices or whatever, you know, I think that just needs to be stamped out within reason. And another thing, the way you talk about that, is I'm a little bit concerned if Russia and China has all these stakes in it. What is their response going to be if America does go to war with Venezuela? Yep. And also because it's going to be like a proxy war where yep. Russia and China could be supporting Venezuela and you know, just fighting and all that kind of thing. And I don't know, I just think that fighting over oil or doing it, and honestly, one of the other problems, like if the express goal was overthrow Maduro and liberate the Venezuelan people, that'd be one thing. But they don't even have congressional authority to really be doing a lot of what they've been doing on international waters and that kind of thing. You know, they need proper authorization before starting a war, before instigating anything like that, and they haven't even requested that from Congress. They just think they can do it all they want. And this is something that a YouTuber I used to watch would say, is that, you know, with a lot of this stuff with war, like Congress has the express ability to declare war. That's part of our Constitution. But when it comes to a lot of other things like foreign policy, how they're going to interact with it, that's all the president. So like the presidency really has the ability to act like you're a Roman emperor and just fucking go roughshod over whatever you want, other than actually declaring war on countries. But you could easily take a national tragedy like 9/11, which Bush did, to then get public support to then start a war. Like, it's really not that. I feel like it wouldn't even be all that hard. But unnecessary war is obviously bad. And yeah.
Yeah, I think if we do go to war, it'd be unlikely that we see congressional approval and a proper declaration of war, which is, again, not a good thing. One thing that is important to bring up is that Nicolas Maduro offered Trump a proposal. He offered a large stake in Venezuelan oil and gold, and to also end ties with the rival countries that want their share with Venezuela, as long as Trump leaves him alone and grants him immunity, not only in the U.S., but international immunity. And Trump counteroffered, saying that that's fine, but you have to step down from power immediately. And Maduro refused. So if it was truly just about oil, and if it was, we really didn't give a shit about, the rest of the country and its citizens, I think we would have seen that accepted. That is a pretty big proposal. So I do think, in terms of what each country wants, the U.S. is the least bad, I guess you could say, wanting the democracy, whereas the other countries just care about the oil and allegiance to themselves.
Yeah, but I feel like they're just saying that. Like, they don't actually care. Like, Trump especially, like, he's literally the architect of January 6th.
Yeah.
And trying to literally calling Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, asking for 11,780 votes. Like, it just is so disingenuous to hear them say that. That's just why I'm skeptical. Yeah. I don't doubt that some of the reasoning is valid. I just think it's incredibly disingenuous.
No, I totally agree. And yeah, coming from him of all people, it really is not believable.
Yeah. All right, you got anything else to say on that?
All good.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Utah redistricting, Prop 4, and the GOP trying to undo the map that has one Democratic-leaning seat. So a quick background on Prop 4. In 2018, Utah voters passed Proposition 4, the Better Boundaries, creating an independent redistricting commission and setting fair map standards to curb partisan gerrymandering. The GOP-dominated legislature later effectively repealed/rewrote parts of Prop 4 and drew a congressional map that heavily favored Republicans. Reform groups sued, arguing this violated Utah's constitution and voters' rights to reform their government. In 2024, the Utah Supreme Court ruled that the legislature can't just gut a citizen-initiated reform like that, and sent the case back to the trial court with strict scrutiny. The recent big shift: on November 10th, 2025, Judge Deanna Gibson threw out the legislature's map and chose a map submitted by the plaintiffs for the 2026 elections. That map creates one strong Democratic D+20 district in northern Salt Lake County, with the three other leaning Republican. Republican leaders freaked out, calling it the most partisan map in state history, and are now appealing to the Utah Supreme Court with Governor Spencer Cox's support. They're planning a full appeal to the Utah Supreme Court to try to overturn the judge's map, and a constitutional amendment on the ballot to reassert the legislature's power to amend or repeal citizen initiatives like Prop 4 going forward. Separately, there's an effort underway to repeal Prop 4 by ballot measure, collecting signatures to give redistricting power fully back to the legislature and remove the independent commission. So, yeah, they're literally trying to appeal it. They're trying to do a constitutional amendment in a special session to say that they can repeal citizen ballot initiatives. Are you kidding me? So a constitutional amendment which would be passed by the Utah State House, Utah State Senate, and I believe it would have to be signed off by the governor as well. Literally saying, oh, we can disregard what you say. We can, if you voted for something, we made it law that we can just disregard that and say, no, fuck you. And so any kind of ballot measure that goes that they don't like, they can just say no. And it's just ridiculous to try to do that. And then, they're trying to repeal Prop 4 by ballot measure and getting signatures to get that on the ballot, which I don't even think that's going to work because people are going to see right through it. And there's all these signature gatherers out, and apparently they're hiring people from out of state to come in here. I saw Phil Lyman, or Lyman, however you say it, who ran for governor. He's far, far right, and he hates Governor Spencer Cox because he ran against him in the primary, and then he even stayed in the general election, kind of like how Andrew Cuomo did. And he got a decent amount of the vote. And he was complaining because he was like, yeah, we have so many Republicans here that could gather signatures. Why are we relying on these out-of-state groups and all that? And I think, that's true, but they're also being disingenuous. They're not supposed to say, I've heard they've been going around with clipboards. I haven't been approached by one, but where they say, oh, do you want to keep Utah Republican? And they're basically trying to get ballot signatures, or they're trying to get signatures to say, oh, well, we don't want one Democratic seat. Let's keep this all Republican. Do you want to stamp out any kind of community of interest in Salt Lake. The fact that there could be a congressional district there that's D plus 20 means there should be one.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how people genuinely fall for the GOP saying this new map is extremely partisan and extremely gerrymandered because it allows for more equal representation. That makes zero sense. Like you said before, I think it was like 40% of Utah is blue now. We should have at least one blue seat. And anyone who says that is gerrymandered, it just doesn't make any sense. Like that, you should be able to easily just refute that argument, and it's based on nothing. And then they see this as a legitimate threat to their power and their control, and they're trying to, for one, stop this for 2026, and also prevent it in the future. Prevent powers of people challenging the executive, challenging legislative and bodies and stuff, and exercising their power to make things more fair.
Yeah. I just think that they're just so intimidated, and even Governor Cox, the fucking bald motherfucker, he was like, yo, look at the campaign Ben McAdams is running, because Ben McAdams obviously was in Congress in 2018 in a I can't remember how Republican that district was supposed to be, but how he won as a moderate. He was like, oh yeah, he used to run so moderate, now he's running as Mamdani and all that. It's like, dude, shut your ass up. Like, you're just upset because we're about to get one seat and no one fucking likes you. And your support among Democrats has completely crumbled because at one point he's trying to pander to them and all that. And it's like, no, we're going to get that seat. And I honestly think it shouldn't be Ben McAdams because he's a little bit more moderate. I want Nate Bluen, who's recently endorsed by Bernie Sanders, incredibly progressive. I think that he would be just a great candidate, and he's aggressive, kind of like we are. And he almost came on the podcast at one point too, but then dates got messed up and we never got him on. But yeah, I think he's a great candidate who can just, fight back. And they're just trying tooth and nail to stop this. Even that one, whatever pedophile aligned, well, all the Republicans are pedophile aligned, but that dude who tried to make it so his family member wouldn't get charged for having sex with a minor. Yeah, he was up there arguing to repeal it's like, dude, you have no credibility. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
None of these Republicans do. Like, with Trump calling them the R word, that's just instantly what I think of. That's what everyone should think of whenever they're trying to act officials or whatever. You support.
They're not professional.
Yeah, they're not professional. You guys are fucking pieces of shit. And you think that you can just walk all over us and do all these terrible things and we're not going to look at you any differently? Like, bruh.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, our country is still operating successful enough in a democracy where we can see what the people really want. And like we saw with Mamdani and the hundreds of millions of dollars that was poured into Andrew Cuomo to stop him from winning, we still saw what the majority wanted, which is Mamdani. And I think it is threatening what the Utah GOP wants, and it is threatening what they're trying to get done. But I think ultimately, with Trump's administration, just the approval numbers going down, with every passing day, and with the GOP just having no, credible stance on their claims, like I was just saying, how it makes no sense to call the map gerrymandered when it's really the opposite. I think the people will get what they really want.
Yeah, and honestly, the biggest issue I find, well, one, the constitutional amendment could go through because of how fucking gerrymandered the legislature is, but trying to repeal Prop 4 by ballot measure, I don't think that's going to work. Like, I think they're going to put that on there. They already voted for Prop 4, and the Republicans are going to have to be very careful because in the 2024 cycle, they had, I think it was 2 ballot measures that got struck down. They were invalidated. So even if they did win the vote, they would just not go into law because they said they were confusingly written. And one of them, Amendment D, it literally was basically to try to undo Prop 4 because it said that, the legislature could undo or mess with what citizens pass, and the court said that it wasn't publicized enough, and it also, the language was too confusing. So they're going to have to say, oh, take the power away from an independent redistricting commission, give it solely to the legislature, and they're not going to vote for that. They overwhelmingly voted for Prop 4. So I just don't think that's going to work. So the biggest threat to us, I think, is the proposed constitutional amendment. Yeah. But they're just, I'm going to be so pissed if that actually goes through. Like, the depravity of them, like, I already would never forgive them for anything they did, but that would just be a new low, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you saw the Georgia election interference case against Trump was dropped. Yep. So I'll go over the facts and then go over, what's kind of debated still. But so last Wednesday, the case was dropped, and it was dropped by a new prosecutor because the original prosecutor was removed from the case because she was having a relationship with a special prosecutor that she personally elected to work on the case. So there is that conflict of interest there. They removed the prosecutor, and then they had to choose a new prosecutor. That choice was given to Pete Skandalakis, and he allegedly asked a bunch of prosecutors. They all denied wanting to do the case. None of them said yes. And with the deadline coming up, he said, okay, I'll do it myself. And when he looked it over, he said that within Georgia law, it's not possible to prosecute because a lot of it happened outside of Georgia. And so basically they went through with this case. The main prosecutor got booted off. Pete came on and said, there's not enough evidence. We're going to drop it. So there is some unanswered questions. Is there a bias with Pete? And does he have any bias to Trump, for dropping the case? It is huge for Trump, regardless, that the case is dropped. It's the last criminal prosecution relating to the 2020 election. It also gives Trump more credibility, I'll say, when he says that this was all, a hoax and all fabricated, just politically to pit people against him. So it is very good for Trump, but there are some questions of why it was dropped. If it gained traction in the first place, all of a sudden this new guy comes on and says there's not enough. So
yeah, and honestly, I was looking forward because we did cover that on the podcast when it first happened, and he was, appointed himself to that case, and I thought at first, wow, that's badass that you do that. Yeah. But if he's saying that, because firstly, it's like I'm studying to be a lawyer. If to say that a lot of the crimes didn't happen in Georgia, if it has to do with interfering with something in Georgia, yeah, that can be charged on the state level. Like the call to Brad Raffensperger asking him to find votes, that's absolutely asking a Georgia official to do something incredibly illegal. So that alone, I think, and that's one of the worst things he did in this context. Like, so that alone should be enough to prosecute him. But I honestly don't think that this is, like, it's good for Trump, but at the same time, I think everyone's hopes of him going to prison went out the window when he won. That's why it was so crushing for us. Yeah, because he had so much accountability going his way. Like, if he wouldn't have won, I bet you he'd be sitting in a jail cell right now.
Yeah, like, and I don't think this really would have gotten much further, unfortunately, because he's the sitting president.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that they stopped. In my opinion, they should have kept trying to, just to be a thorn in his side and been like, we're going to try to hold you accountable. But it's just going to be really hard with Trump being the president. I just think that he needs to be held accountable. And honestly, if he dies in office or whatever, that's in some ways that's good because at least there's no more Trump. But in some ways that's bad because I want him to be held accountable. But he's going to be so old at that point and that's something they take into consideration before sentencing someone. That doesn't give them a get out of jail free card, but like that's a mitigating factor. Like that's when I think it's funny when they're like, oh yeah, Joe Biden should go to jail. Literally, I didn't mention this much when it happened, but when they found the classified documents in Joe Biden's garage and all that kind of shit, one of the things that the special prosecutor, who was a Republican appointed by Merrick Garland, one of the things he said was that Biden didn't seem to be all there, so it wouldn't really make sense to prosecute him for his crimes and that sort of thing. That could be easily said for Trump, too. So it's like, it's a little bit like we really can't just get accountability, just hope that, I don't know, like that his presidency keeps on going down. I mean, he's sitting at, what, like 36% approval? Like, it can't, I mean, it could get much worse for Trump, but it's yet to be seen. I just want his presidency for the rest of it just to be hell for him.
Yeah. I agree. Happy holidays. Enjoy your time at home. And some people will, I mean, we're going to take the time to relax and enjoy ourselves, but I know both of us will definitely be keeping an eye on what's going on. We're not going to necessarily be taking a break. And we're going to come back ready to go with lots of stuff to talk about. And we're going to do a live debate with some of the other groups on campus. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Have a nice day or night, everybody. See you later.